With Mark Humphery-Jenner. He's an Associate Professor of Finance at the University of New South Wales Business School. Welcome back to the programme, Mark. Now, China has sanctioned 20 US companies and 10 individuals. How significant is that in the broader trade war between the world's two largest economies?
Well, firstly, thanks for having me. And to some extent, it is symbolic, like you indicated, in that many of these companies didn't do a lot of business in China to begin with. Now, Boeing is a little bit of an exception. Its defense arm has been effectively hit here. However, its core airline arm has not been included. Now, what this basically means is China is trying to indicate at least a degree of toughness, particularly in relation to this arms deal, but it hasn't necessarily escalated the tensions in a meaningful way. If China really wanted to escalate tensions, it would have included Boeing per se, but that clearly would have been very disruptive to many of its domestic entities. For example, China Southern already has, or still has, Boeing aircraft that are on order that are set to be delivered. China, for example, it has about 31 Boeing 737 MAXs, so including Boeing per se would have been super disruptive. What this effectively means is China is trying to indicate its displeasure with the arms deal without dramatically escalating the trade tensions that are ongoing.
And what response has this brought from the US?
Well, at the moment, the United States has indicated perhaps a lack of approval or agreement with the sanctions, but it has been relatively muted. If we're looking at the stock price reaction, well, Boeing's stock price went down about 1%, and that tells us to some extent how the market's interpreting this, i.e. there's a risk that this could escalate to affect all of Boeing, but if it were really a probability that were going to occur, the market reaction would have been larger. And to put this in context as well, if we're looking at Boeing's revenue, only just over 2% of the revenue comes from China, telling us that the impact on Boeing per se will be relatively limited.
And can we expect similar sanctions on non-US defense companies engaging with Taiwan?
It's certainly a possibility. Now, say, for example, and I'm just using a hypothetical here, but say hypothetically Airbus were to start supplying military type apparatus to Taiwan, one could certainly see similar things expand. What it does tell us, whether the company is United States based or overseas, if they're going to be doing business in the defense industry with Taiwan, they need to be very careful about exactly which corporation is doing it. So Boeing, to some extent, was lucky or had planned well here in that the defense apparatus was separate, a separate corporate entity from Boeing per se. But of course, sanctions could expand to non-US entities if they were to do similar things.
Mark Humphery-Jenner, Associate Professor of Finance at the University of New South Wales Business School. Thank you very much for your insights.